Watch what happens in any social room when an individual aggressively tries to please everyone around them. They smile excessively, agree instantly, offer free favors, lower their price, and apologize for taking up space. They believe this behavior makes them liked, valued, and respected. In reality, behavioral mechanics dictates the exact opposite outcome. The human brain immediately registers this over-availability as cheap, low status, and submissive. You are actively training the people around you to treat you as a disposable commodity. Respect is never given out of pity or affection. It is mechanically extracted through value perception and nonverbal friction. When you make yourself cheap, when you lower your boundaries, discount your time, and accept sub-baseline treatment, you send a blaring signal to every psychological operator in the room that your frame carries zero cost to breach. The human subconscious does not respect what is free. It respects what is scarce, guarded, and hard to earn. If you exit this room right now, you will keep running the same submissive script, letting people overstep your boundaries, take your labor for granted, and treat your presence as an afterthought. Stay right here. Over the next few minutes, we will deconstruct the dark psychology of value perception, giving you the tactical blueprint to stop being cheap, re-architect your personal frame, and force the human beings around you to pay the full price of your respect. Human beings do not evaluate value based on objective reality. They evaluate value based on psychological framing, nonverbal signals, and the amount of friction required to access a resource. When you act cheap, when you undersell your capabilities, over-explain your actions, or grant immediate access to your time without requiring an investment, the human brain automatically registers you as a low-status resource. You trigger a subconscious behavioral response in others that invites exploitation. They begin talking over you, ignoring your boundaries, and treating your presence as trivial. Respect is not something you beg for. It is a psychological response that you mechanically compel through your personal baseline. The fastest way to destroy your perceived value is to make your presence, time, and agreement universally available. When you answer every call on the first ring, say yes to every low-leverage request, and remain constantly accessible, you collapse your own scarcity. In human behavioral dynamics, high availability equals low value. High authority operators guard their time with clinical precision. They do not respond instantly to low-priority inputs, nor do they jump at every opportunity to validate others. When you introduce friction and scarcity to your schedule, you force others to work for your attention, instantly elevating your baseline status in their mental hierarchy. Psychological profiling reveals a cold truth. Human beings do not value what is given to them for free. They value what they have sacrificed to obtain. When you lower your standards, give away your expertise without cost, or forgive boundary breaches without consequence, you deprive the other person of an investment point. Because they paid no price, whether in effort, money, or behavioral adjustment, their brain assigns zero value to what they received from you. Stop discounting yourself to be liked. Demand high behavioral standards from the people in your orbit and force them to invest energy into maintaining a relationship with you. The more they invest, the more fiercely they will respect you. Your physical body is constantly broadcasting whether your frame is cheap or expensive. A low-value frame is marked by nervous fidgeting, rapid head nodding, an elevated vocal pitch, and an eagerness to fill silent gaps with unnecessary speech. This behavior leaks submissive vulnerability. A high-value frame operates on physical minimalism. Ground your posture, drop your shoulders, slow your vocal cadence, and hold unblinking eye contact. When you speak, speak with calm, resonant authority, using 50% fewer words. Let silence sit in the room without rushing to fix it. Physical stillness signals to the room that your frame is impenetrable and expensive. Respect is forged at the exact boundary line where you refuse to tolerate sub-baseline behavior. Most people state their boundaries verbally but fail to enforce them physically when challenged. When someone disrespects your time, interrupts your speech, or breaches a boundary, do not engage in an emotional argument. Arguments are cheap. They signal that your frame is shaken. Instead, deploy an immediate, cold, tactical consequence. Withdraw your attention, freeze your nonverbal engagement, or walk away from the interaction entirely. When people learn that breaching your boundaries results in an immediate loss of access to you, their behavior recalibrates out of self-preservation. The ultimate marker of a cheap frame is the visible, desperate need for approval from others. When you seek validation, whether through humble bragging, over-explaining your decisions, or fishing for compliments, you hand the steering wheel of your self-worth over to the room. Tactical operators operate from a sovereign baseline. They do not ask for permission to hold space, nor do they care about the subjective opinions of low-leverage observers. When you display complete indifference to cheap praise and low-level criticism, you project an unshakable internal certainty. Others will naturally defer to a frame that requires nothing from them. The behavioral mechanics of underpricing self-worth represent a systematic breakdown in how an individual communicates their status, authority, and boundaries to the surrounding environment. When you engage in the practice of being cheap, whether by constantly discounting your professional rates, apologizing for demanding basic standards, or offering your time and labor without requiring equivalent reciprocity, you generate a clear psychological broadcast. Human beings are highly tuned biological profilers, constantly assessing the relative status, confidence, and boundaries of everyone in their social radius. The moment you display an eagerness to undervalue what you bring to the table, the subconscious minds of those around you automatically classify you as a low-priority, low-status operator whose frame can be breached with minimal effort. This dynamic operates on a fundamental law of human social hierarchy. People treat you according to the exact baseline you establish for yourself. When you underprice your self-worth, you attempt to buy social safety, approval, or connection by making yourself as frictionless and convenient as possible. You adopt a submissive stance, hoping that by lowering your cost, others will like you or treat you gently. However, in dark psychology and behavioral profiling, convenience is the exact opposite of authority. By making yourself cheap, you communicate that your time, skill, and presence carry very little intrinsic value. Instead of earning gratitude or affection, your submissive posture invites exploiters, narcissists, and high-authority operators to push past your boundaries, take your contributions for granted, and assign you a permanent position at the bottom of the room's hierarchy. Furthermore, underpricing self-worth leaks directly into your nonverbal physical hardware, creating a self-reinforcing loop of low status. An individual who feels cheap inside unconsciously expresses that belief through micro-behaviors: erratic eye movement, rapid head nodding to show agreement, a higher vocal pitch, and an aggressive tendency to over-explain simple decisions. These microsignals communicate to the subconscious mind of any observer that you are actively seeking external validation and fear conflict. High-authority individuals immediately register these nonverbal leaks and adjust their behavior accordingly, speaking over you, discounting your opinions, or assigning you low-leverage tasks without a second thought. You become a passive participant in your own devaluation, continually confirming the low price tag you placed on your frame. To break this cycle, you must understand that self-worth is not an abstract emotional state. It is an operational standard expressed through friction and boundary enforcement. The human brain is hardwired to associate high value with high friction, exclusivity, and firm resistance. When you refuse to be cheap, you introduce necessary friction into your interactions. You stop over-offering your availability. You set non-negotiable prices for your expertise. And you make it clear that access to your time and attention requires a genuine investment from the other party. By eliminating the submissive impulse to make things easy for people who do not respect your baseline, you force the surrounding environment to recalibrate its perception of your status. Stopping the habit of underpricing yourself requires a total overhaul of your social operating system. You must treat your time, focus, and energy as scarce, highly valuable assets that cannot be discounted under any circumstances. The moment you stop begging for acceptance through low prices and easy terms, you strip low-leverage operators of their ability to manipulate you. You replace the submissive desire to be liked with a cold, uncompromising commitment to self-sovereignty, signaling to every person in your environment that your frame is expensive, fully defended, and worthy of absolute respect. Perceived scarcity and social leverage form the fundamental psychological architecture that dictates how human beings assign status, authority, and value to resources and individuals alike. In human behavioral mechanics, value is almost never an inherent intrinsic property. It is an abstract projection constructed through friction, restricted access, and high-status boundary points. The human subconscious is biologically programmed to ignore, undervalue, and exploit whatever is abundantly available, easily obtained, and offered without condition. Conversely, the moment a resource, skill, or human presence becomes difficult to access, highly guarded, and attached to a steep cost of entry, its perceived value skyrockets within the surrounding social environment. When an operator fails to manage their perceived scarcity, they collapse their own social leverage across every interaction. By remaining constantly available, replying instantly to low-priority inputs, agreeing unconditionally to demands, and volunteering their presence without hesitation, they inadvertently signal that their time holds negligible worth. This relentless accessibility strips away any sense of mystery, anticipation, or respect, turning what could have been a high-value presence into a predictable, low-status commodity. In social dynamics, high availability is reflexively equated with low demand. The moment you make access to your cognitive bandwidth, attention, or physical presence effortless, you grant others total permission to treat your contributions as baseline expectations rather than privileged assets. To construct genuine social leverage, you must deliberately introduce strategic friction into the way you interact with your environment. Strategic friction does not mean being petty, aggressive, or artificially difficult. It means holding an unshakable boundary around your availability and requiring others to make a meaningful investment to earn your focus. High-authority operators guard their calendar, their energy, and their attention with absolute clinical precision. They do not jump at every invitation, nor do they rush to validate every voice in the room. By establishing high standards for who gets access to their inner circle and under what conditions, they create an aura of exclusivity that forces surrounding operators to elevate their behavioral standards just to engage with them. The nonverbal signature of high value is the physical, silent manifestation of absolute frame dominance, internal authority, and complete freedom from the need for external validation. Human beings are constant biological profilers, evaluating status, power, and confidence long before a single word is spoken in a conversation. An individual who carries a low-value, submissive frame leaks their internal insecurity through a series of anxious micro-behaviors: erratic head nods, frequent shiftings of weight, nervous hand gestures, compressed body language, and a vocal cadence that rises in pitch at the end of sentences to seek approval. These microsignals act as a clear broadcast to the human subconscious that your presence is cheap, your boundaries are weak, and your position in the room can be easily manipulated or ignored. To project high-value status, you must completely overhaul your physical hardware and eliminate all low-status, approval-seeking movement. High-value presence operates on the law of physical minimalism and spatial ownership. High-status operators do not rush their movements, nor do they react abruptly to sudden noises, hostile inputs, or social awkwardness. They occupy physical space with relaxed, unshakable expansion, dropping their shoulders back, grounding their weight firmly into the floor, and keeping their spine in upright alignment. By slowing down your physical transitions by just 20%, you project a calm, deliberate certainty that instantly commands the room. Your stillness signals to the nervous systems of everyone around you that you are entirely unbothered by environmental pressure and fully in control of your immediate baseline. Visual focus and ocular control represent some of the most potent nonverbal indicators of psychological leverage and status. A low-value frame is marked by darting eye movements, rapid blinking, and a submissive habit of dropping the gaze downward when eye contact becomes intense. To project high-value authority, you must cultivate a steady, heavy visual lock that communicates complete comfort with high-pressure social friction. When engaging with someone, maintain calm, unblinking eye contact, allowing your gaze to remain still even when the other person becomes animated, aggressive, or nervous. This visual stillness deprives the other party of approval signals, creating a subtle psychological vacuum that forces them to work harder, speak more carefully, and adjust their behavior to match your steady, unyielding frequency. Vocal mechanics and acoustic resonance act as direct nonverbal channels for enforcing high-status boundaries and extracting respect. Low-value operators tend to speak rapidly, over-explain simple points, interrupt others out of anxiety, and fill quiet moments with empty filler words. High-value vocal signatures operate in the exact opposite direction, utilizing a deep, diaphragmatic resonance, a measured cadence, and deliberate, heavy pauses. When you speak from your diaphragm, lowering your pitch and reducing your word count by half, your voice carries a heavy, unmistakable weight. You do not rush to answer questions or defend your position. You allow silence to hang in the air after you finish speaking, forcing the listener to absorb the full weight of your statements. The investment bias mechanism is a core psychological driver that dictates how human beings assign value, respect, and emotional commitment to everything they interact with. Rooted deeply in cognitive dissonance and the sunk cost effect, the human brain is hardwired to value only what it has struggled, sacrificed, or invested resources to obtain. When an individual makes significant investments of time, emotional energy, financial capital, or personal effort into a project, a goal, or another person, their mind must justify that expenditure by convincing itself that the target of that investment is extraordinarily valuable. Conversely, when a resource, service, or human presence is handed out for free without requiring any sacrifice or behavioral adjustment, the human subconscious reflexively classifies it as cheap, disposable, and unworthy of serious regard. When you operate with a submissive frame, constantly over-offering your help, solving problems unprompted, and giving away your expertise or loyalty without requiring an investment in return, you trigger this mechanism in reverse. You deprive the people around you of the opportunity to invest in you. Because they paid zero price to acquire your time, gain your agreement, or secure your presence, their cognitive architecture assigns zero value to what they have received. You may believe that being exceptionally helpful, overly accommodating, and frictionless will make people appreciate and respect you. But human psychology does not work on gratitude. It works on leverage and cognitive justification. By making access to yourself free and effortless, You actively condition others to view your contributions as baseline expectations rather than privileged assets. To harness the investment bias mechanism to force respect, you must systematically implement strict entry costs and behavioral standards across all your professional and personal relationships. You must stop rescuing people from the consequences of their own inaction and cease volunteering your time for low-leverage requests. High-authority operators force others to earn access to their skills, mentorship, and companionship. When someone asks for your time or assistance, you require them to make an initial investment first, whether that means following a strict process, completing a preliminary task, or adjusting their behavior to meet your standards. The moment someone has to work, adapt, or sacrifice to gain your approval, their brain automatically elevates your status to justify their own effort, locking them into a frame of heightened respect and valuation. This mechanism operates with equal force regarding how you handle boundary breaches and sub-baseline behavior in your environment. If someone disrespects your time or violates a boundary, and you forgive them instantly without requiring a meaningful behavioral recalibration or cost, you reinforce the perception that your boundaries are cheap. You teach them that misbehavior carries no penalty, which encourages further exploitation. To build genuine leverage, any breach of your standards must be met with immediate friction, a withdrawal of your attention, a freeze on your availability, or a cold enforcement of consequences. When people realize that maintaining a connection with you requires continuous care, behavioral alignment, and emotional investment, they become fiercely protective of that relationship and treat your frame with uncompromising care. Mastering the investment bias mechanism requires you to completely eliminate the submissive urge to offer unearned discounts on your worth. You must accept the cold psychological reality that people will never respect what they did not have to work for. By stepping back, guarding your resources, and forcing every person in your orbit to invest meaningful effort, time, and respect to maintain a place in your life, you shift from a low-status operator begging for appreciation to a sovereign frame that commands absolute, non-negotiable value in every room you enter. Enforcing sovereign frame dominance is the ultimate operational discipline required to command total situational respect and prevent surrounding operators from eroding your baseline value. In social dynamics and human profiling, a frame represents the underlying set of assumptions, boundaries, and emotional tone that governs any given interaction. The individual who possesses the strongest, most unshakable internal frame naturally controls the reality of the room, compelling everyone else to subconsciously adapt to their parameters. High-authority operators do not ask the room for approval to hold space, nor do they look around to see how their statements are being received. They operate from an internal locus of control, treating their standards and decisions as absolute realities that require zero defense or over-explanation. When someone attempts to challenge your frame through covert disrespect, subtle dismissals, or aggressive frame tests, your response must never be emotional defense or nervous justification. Explaining yourself to someone who disrespected you is an immediate surrender of leverage. It signals that their opinion carries enough weight to shake your certainty. Sovereign dominance responds to frame tests with cold, silent indifference, slow speech, or a calm refusal to engage on their emotional level. Frame control is forged and maintained at the exact boundary line where you enforce non-negotiable consequences for unacceptable behavior. A frame without teeth is merely a suggestion that low-leverage operators will happily ignore. When an individual in your environment interrupts you, breaches your time boundaries, or attempts to lower your status, you must deploy an immediate, tactical correction. This does not mean launching into a loud argument or displaying anger, as emotional outbursts leak vulnerability and signal that your frame has been breached. Instead, you deploy physical and psychological withdrawal. You freeze your nonverbal warmth, reduce your eye contact, shorten your answers, or walk away from the interaction entirely. By making your presence contingent upon absolute respect, you send a clear, undeniable signal that sub-baseline behavior results in an immediate loss of access to your frame. This level of frame control requires you to cultivate a deep psychological comfort with social awkwardness and tension. Weak operators break under the weight of a silent room, rushing to fill quiet gaps with nervous banter, forced smiles, or premature concessions just to make others feel comfortable. Sovereign operators embrace silence as an instrument of power. They allow quiet pauses to hang in the air after making a statement, forcing the other party to process the full weight of their words and carry the burden of the conversation. When you prove that you can sit comfortably in high-pressure silence without flinching, nodding, or backing down, the surrounding environment realizes that your frame cannot be pushed around, forcing others to adjust their pitch, tone, and behavior to match your quiet frequency. Mastering sovereign frame dominance transforms you from an easily manipulated target into an immovable, high-status presence in any environment you walk into. You no longer allow others to dictate your worth, underprice your contributions, or set the terms of your engagement. By anchoring yourself in rigid physical stillness, enforcing strict behavioral boundaries without apology, and maintaining unshakable internal certainty, you establish a sovereign baseline that automatically repels exploiters and forces every person in your orbit to deal with you on terms of non-negotiable, absolute respect.